All right. Director of the Office of Workforce and Economic Development, my friend, the inimitable Director Joaquín Torres. Welcome to Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. And to all the folks who are tuning in now, thank you very much for tuning in as well. We'll also be putting this live on YouTube. And I just want to introduce all of you to the concept. So Manny's is a physical space in San Francisco that provides civic engagement, content, and programming for the community. And we've moved our programming online in this time of need. And so thank you all for tuning in. You can tag us at Welcome to Manny's. And if you have a question for Director Torres, you can type it into the Q&A box at any time. You do not have to wait for questions. This is going to be a 30-minute program, folks. It's going to be short. So if you have a question, type it in now and we'll get to your questions. Joaquín, hello.
How are you, Manny?
Good to see you. I want to talk about this mustache moment I see on you. Is this a conscious choice, or is this how your hair grows out naturally?
This is just how my hair grows out naturally. This is all I got.
No hair on the sides and just...
I get like little whiskers and things on these sides, but that's about it.
You know what? I feel like that's justice because you have such good hair on top. The universe would not be fully balanced if that good hair translated to a great beard. So I can sleep more peacefully at night now knowing that you don't have good hair everywhere.
The universe has a way, Manny.
It does have a way. So speaking of that, let's talk about your acting career before we get into meat and potatoes of how we're going to recover from this. So you were an actor before you got into city politics. Is that correct?
That's right.
Tell me about that. When were you an actor? Where were you an actor?
Yeah.
And why did you decide to go from acting to politics or government at least?
Wow. I like to say that I went into public service from acting.
Okay.
I guess because it was always a part of my life. Public service was, and then also being able to translate so many of the plays that I worked on, which was primarily what I did when I was based in New York, and traveling from New York to Chicago to Seattle, to actually out here at the California Shakespeare Festival was one of the first shows I did, to off Broadway with productions in Lincoln Center, things like that. Wow. So I spent about 9 years in New York. I went to grad school for acting. It was one of the things I did at NYU. And it's been, it was an extraordinary ride. And really it was around the time that Obama was in, I helped worked on his political campaign for president, obviously, right? Yeah. And I was just so struck by his words during the inauguration about the needing to take on more social responsibility that I took it to heart. I moved out to San Francisco. I sold, I sold all the books that I had, anything else that I could to get a one-way ticket back out here, and started to work for then Mayor Gavin Newsom, now Governor Gavin Newsom.
You moved out west.
Moved out west, back out west. My family's here in California, yes. In LA, and here.
Yes, I've had the privilege in these conversations to interview David Plouffe, who managed the 2008 campaign.
Yeah.
The last conversation I had was with my friend Jose Espinoza, who is a actor in New York, about what it's like to be an actor in New York right now. So I feel like you are the perfect encapsulation of both of those things together, Obama's legacy and an actor in New York. So let's talk about San Francisco. You run the Office of Workforce and Economic Development. I know what that office does, but for the folks who are listening now and in the future, can you just give a quick encapsulation of what the hell does it mean to run the Office of Workforce and Economic Development? And also, obviously, such a critical role that office is playing right now. What role is the office playing in this particular moment in the city?
Sure. So I'll start with the beginning, Manny, just in terms of the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. That really is quite simply an office that's meant to create pathways to opportunity, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're connected locally or internationally, there's a place for you here as that size business. And then also, of course, paying very particular attention to our neighborhoods, right? And making sure that our neighborhoods are thriving and vibrant, and that the small businesses that are a part of them and that really create their character, like Manny's, are able to survive and able to thrive and succeed here, because they also create jobs. And so the other half of our office really focuses on workforce opportunity, training for hospitality and healthcare and tech. I'm guessing there's a little bronzino that's
yes.
up, Manny.
I'm sorry, my fish is gonna burn.
No. if you're an actor, Manny, you're also a waiter. And so one of the restaurants I used to work at, where I would make my tips, was serving branzino and dorade.
It looks great. I didn't burn it. Okay, I'm sorry. Go back.
Did you put some herbs in there, Manny?
It was a butter sauce, actually.
Oh, butter sauce.
It's from, do you know, just a quick pause. Do you know Ottolenghi? I'm making this recipe.
Oh my God, really?
It calls for trout, but I got branzino instead.
Oh God, that is a great cookbook.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Back to the OAWD.
Well, no, so I mean, really about like facilitating people's dreams, whether they're someone who's looking for an opportunity or someone who's trying to create opportunities, not only for themselves, but for others, and hoping to maximize all of that creativity, all of that energy into economic development, job creation, tax creation, revenue creation, and really creating the fabric of what makes a great city. Nightlife, entertainment, and bars, and parks, and events, and festivals, all of that. Which has been so important to Mayor Breed here and important to the fabric of our city.
Yeah. How many people work in OAWD in this?
About 134 people.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so tell me about. Well, we're gonna the most of this conversation is gonna be about recovery, but tell me about what the greatest challenge was for the office before the coronavirus pandemic. Kind of what were you working on, and what problems were you trying to solve? I know
that's a great question, Manny. I think two of the big pathways were, of course, what we talked about at Manny's just a few months before all this began.
Yeah.
This nightmare that so many people across the country and across the globe are experiencing.
Yeah.
And really just a quick shout out to anyone who's out there watching. I hope you're all safe, staying distant when you're outside, covering your face, listening to the health protocols that are being announced. It's so deeply important for you to maintain and help us flatten this curve right now. It's a critical time for us here in San Francisco. And I know that so many of you are doing that, Manny, and I really appreciate all of the advocacy work and communication work that you've done too to help get that word out, to make sure that people are being responsible. Yeah. That's so important. But before this began, it was really kind of two challenges. How do we make it easier for small businesses to succeed and to thrive here? Because the bureaucracy was just getting in the way. You heard the mayor always talking about the red tape and all of like the nicks and picks and all of the things that will kind of make it be difficult for you to succeed here in the city. And then the other side was we would be touting our very low unemployment rate here in San Francisco. But when you peeked behind that curtain, you would see that so many more people, and in particular, people of color and women, were not represented in that success of that low unemployment rate. So much of that work was diving deeply into our communities and making sure that people knew that there was an access point, again, a pathway for them to contribute and to benefit from a thriving economy. Now,
Yeah, so OAWD has taken such a central role in the response of San Francisco to the efforts that both San Francisco has taken presciently and early to shut down the city and beyond. And so can you tell me a little bit about the role that OAWD, your department, is playing right now in the response to COVID-19 and how it is implementing solutions to help both workers and employers?
Yeah, I think that in the beginning of it, Manny, so much of it was around people to know what was going to happen. People to understand the nature of the declaration of emergency and really thinking that we were already way ahead of the curve when we were simply beginning to get ahead of the curve at that point in time. And making sure that the bureaucracy was listening to those public health experts to say that, we need to get ahead of this. It's going to be very difficult for you. We had very robust conversations about the rate at which we would do that. But we knew it was the right thing to do. We knew it was the right thing to jump ahead and be very strict about it because people's lives were on the line. So while you're dealing with that context, how do you talk to the business community about the realities of that impact, right? What does it mean for us? How are we communicating with people in real time? Because as we know right now, every dollar matters. Every hour of business operation matters right now for those that are lucky enough to continue operating because they provide an essential service. It's certainly important for the public who need access to those services as well. So having those conversations constantly with all of those stakeholders, whether you talk about the Golden Gate Restaurant Association and Lori Thomas, or the Hotel Council through Kevin Carroll, and making sure that we were connected with SF Travel and our tourism industry and all of our benefit districts around the city to make sure people understood from a very detailed perspective what information was coming out, what it meant for them, and to be able to provide a level of translation for the business community as well. Talking with the small business commissioners, of which you are, and some of your colleagues on the Small Business Commission and the director of the Office of Small Business, Regina Dick-Andresi, and making sure we're all on the same page about how are we communicating with our folks. The same thing is true for our nonprofit community, making sure all of them knew what was going on and how to interpret all the rules and regulations and the specifics of the orders that have been coming out since this journey began for all of us. Now it's about and helping to kind of sometimes just talk through with people that this is a really hard time,
right?
That people are really hurting and really feeling the impact, both from a health perspective. People are stressed, they're uncertain, they're fearful. They're seeing what the country looks like. They're hoping it doesn't happen here in San Francisco, and knock on wood. And whoever it is that you pray to, that we will continue doing a great job here in San Francisco in beating this and getting back to a vibrant city that we are. Just really kind of focusing in those areas at first. Then, Manny, the hard part is going to be really having those continued conversations with our public health partners and Dr. Colfax and his colleagues around what does this look like now in the near future, in the near term? What does this look like for us when we begin to see some positive and future positive changes?
Right.
And in what way will that overlay itself with the recessionary impacts that we'll feel here in the city as well?
Right. So let's get to the future in a second. Before we do that, here's kind of what, as a receiver of all of this directives and information, you were a giver, right? You ran OAWD, and everyone was telling us, if you need help, go to the OAWD website. That's your clearinghouse. But as a receiver of what's happened, I heard actually surprisingly few people gripe about the need, the directives from the city to shut down, because we all understood that this was for the good of us all. And I think San Francisco, when it comes down to it, we are a unit and we want to help each other. And so there wasn't a lot of griping about the shutting down because we knew it had to be done. Then there was an initial extreme fear and maybe even mania. What is this going to mean? How long are we going to be in this? What's going to happen to my business? The city came out with some early measures to support. There was that $1 million fund that got eaten up pretty quickly. And then there were some, we're not going to make you pay your registration bill right now. And most people were like, well, I hope that's not everything, because that's not going to cut it. But I'm glad the city's doing something. And then we saw the state step in, and then we saw the federal government step in a beefy way. And I think now what people are hearing is, okay, the government's going to give me $600 more per week in an unemployment check, in addition to a $1,200 one-time check. And small business owners are hearing, okay, so the government will give me basically as much money as I need to pay my payroll in a forgivable loan. And I think a lot of us are saying, okay, if all this really works, if folks really get these checks, and both small business owners and employees, this is something that we could probably bear for a while. Is that how you're feeling about it? Are you feeling like the state, the city, and the federal government have stepped up enough to where we can all kind of handle things for the time being until this whole thing gets fixed? Or where are you on all this?
I was lucky enough to be on a call last night with Speaker Pelosi and talking about the next phase, about what is going to be essentially the CARES 2 Act that builds upon the efforts that led to this major $1 trillion investment, including hundreds of billions of dollars that support small businesses. The first thing that she said, or one of the first things she said on the call was, and that is not enough, that there is still more resources that are necessary with the full weight of the federal government and the resources that they have available to them to help us better invest and create access to those resources in cities all across the country, and of course here in San Francisco. So that's going to be extremely, extremely important for us. But just to back up a little bit, We made investments in the beginning. We made an initial $1 million investment for $10,000 grants. We announced last week, I believe it was last week. It's hard to keep track of the days right now.
It's so hard. I don't even know what day it is today. Like, it could be Tuesday, it could be Saturday. I have no idea. It's the day before. I know it's the day before Passover.
You got it.
That I know.
Yeah, right. And we announced last week a $10 million fund to double down on the initial investment we made around $10,000 grants, and then to create $9 million to support a 0% interest up to $50,000 loan fund.
Yeah.
So that we could support more people right now who may not be able to benefit from the federal programs that are out there right now. Because what we've heard, and I know that you've been experiencing this as well, is that not everybody has been able to gain access. Right. Banks have said they've reached their capacity. Yep. Some banks are having certain practices that are unacceptable to us in terms of who they're serving, how they're serving them, when and why. And there really need to be a larger city conversation with our financial partners about how are we going to create that access for more people who deeply, deeply need the resources right now. That's essential. We're very grateful, Manny, that we've seen the state and federal government step up in this way. Mm-hmm. We thanked Speaker Pelosi last night with regards to the expanded benefits that we advocated here for. It was so deeply important to the mayor to see those benefits expand so that independent contractors and gig workers would have access to unemployment in the environment that we're in right now, so that that level of vulnerability could be lessened through that investment. $450 a week, right? I'm a person who used to take unemployment when I was an actor, right? Mm-hmm. I remember what that dollar amount was. Just to be pretty clear, it ain't that much higher these days than when it was 10 or 11 years ago. But to see the fact that those weeks have expanded, that's a conversation that will continue. To see the fact that the amount has expanded so people can expect more per week is extremely, extremely important. And just a quick plug, Manny, if people have questions, whether they are a small business or whether they are an employee who's been impacted, please go to our website, OAWD.org. That's OEWD.org. And just click on the coronavirus, COVID-19 button that you'll see. It'll pop up. It's really easy.
Very informative.
Right. And you can see the list of all the resources, who our partners are, and then specific phone numbers that you can call so you can get some one-on-one assistance. You might not always reach somebody, but they're going to call you back. And it's something that I've been testing out too. And it's something that the Board of Supervisors have been sharing with us here. I can tell you the mayor's always having very aggressive conversations with me still around getting information out there, getting more resources out there, making sure that we're filling the gaps and we're thinking about where the gaps are so people can be served. So that's our job right now.
I can only, you are so well suited to be in this moment because you have been in the trenches fighting for small businesses and for employees for years in the city. And so I'm glad that you are leading the ship right now. Let's talk about recovery because we've been having such a good conversation that we're almost out of our time. We want to get to folks' questions. So if folks have questions for Director Torres, now's the time to type them in so we can ask them. We've only got about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about recovery. So the city has assembled a COVID-19 recovery task force.
Right.
You are the director of the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we don't know what needs to be done to recover because we're still in it. We're still in the thing, right? We're in the belly of the beast. We're still sitting out of our apartments, We don't know if we're going to be done May 3rd or June 1 or when. Yeah. And so we can't really prescribe the recovery. But what I want to ask you is, what do you think the recovery needs to include? I mean, what measures do you think are a must-have in order for San Francisco to bounce back even better than it was before?
Well, Manny, I just want to give a shout out because it's not about me. It's really about the people, as you know, that support you in doing the work that needs to be done. Yeah. I really want to give a shout out to those who've been on the recovery panel to start the initial conversations before the mayor established this task force. Dylan Smith in our office and Laurel Arvanitidis, who runs our business development team.
Mm.
as well as Amy Cohen, who had supported a lot of our public space initiatives in the city, providing very valuable insight at the table to make sure that the principles that will guide recovery are based on the ground realities.
Mm.
That's and also visionary thinking, so that we can tailor our strategy to the times that we're in right now, of course, but also what's going to be necessary in the months, in the multiple months, and in the years to come, so that we are being very thoughtful about the long term. So first thinking about, it's not just about what happens now, even though survival and focusing on survival is essential, but also thinking long term. What opportunities do we have right now to be thoughtful about how we reinvest in our communities?
Right.
What do we do to support small and medium-sized businesses? What are the strategic efforts going to be there? How do we support and prioritize vulnerable populations? People who have been even more adversely impacted by COVID and the sense of isolation that has been created here in the city. Where does arts and culture play in into the vibrancy of our city? It's so strange right now to be out there on the streets when you're out there for your essential business only, going to your grocery stores and seeing this lack of hesitation among people that are normally always up in each other's faces, and connecting with each other.
Right.
So where does arts and culture play into that? It's been such a pleasure to see some of our legacy businesses like the Roxy provide online screenings to give people that sense of community out there. How does that play in right now? And I'll come back to that in a second. Reminding ourselves that we're part of a global economy.
Right.
And remembering that the supply chains affect our business here, and then also our economy here is affected by what business we are able to do abroad. Remembering we are a global city, we have international prominence, I would say intergalactic prominence, based on some of the work that gets done here in the city that not many people know about, but certainly is important when we think about the future in terms of technology and science and health. The best health practitioners here in San Francisco. And then, of course, complementing what's going on with the state and federal government as well, in terms of the thoughts that they're having right now about additional recovery, making sure that when they're making those recovery investments, not the relief investments right now, these are relief investments that are happening, but recovery investments that will be necessary and coordination that will be necessary. I'm thinking about our local manufacturers, Manny, and people who help produce products here. And then finally connecting San Franciscans to jobs. That means that businesses need to be open, they need to be supported. We were having conversations today just around how costly it's going to be for some folks to restart their businesses. We have to be very, very thoughtful about that. What are the costs necessary? What is the capital needs that people are going to have as they look towards recovery? And so we want to be there to support them through that. But then I mentioned arts and culture, Manny, and I know you're so deeply in tune with that. We're very proud right now as San Franciscans because we are ahead of the curve, because we are a know-how city. Right. I was on a call recently with some leadership from Spur who talked about it was San Francisco and another county who helped lead the way in saying this is something that has to be done for the good of our city and ultimately for the long-term prosperity and economic vitality of our city. Right. I think people here in San Francisco, now that they have more time to read the news or catch those comments, are proud to see their governor, which was formerly their mayor, on national news, proud to see their mayor, London Breed, on national news, leading the way as a strategic and visionary thinker in this field. Right. We need to build on that. And that will be part of our recovery as well from a softer lens. What will happen on our streets? What will happen for arts activation? What will happen to nightlife? What will happen to culture? What will happen to performance? What will happen to our festivals? Yeah. That other layer, as well as the hard nuts and bolts work of recovery and economic recovery, which I know Carmen Chu, our assessor recorder, Jose Cisneros, our treasurer, the head of the Labor Council, Rudy Gonzalez, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, Rodney, will be leading those efforts. Right. I just think so. There are people that are deeply in tune with the needs of our city, and it'll be exciting to get to work so that we can bring some hope to the times that we're in right now.
Right. Thank you very much for that answer.
I know there was a lot, Maddie.
No, but I appreciate it, and it is something I'm sure you're thinking a lot about, and obviously something that is evolving as we understand what this is. I just have like one or two quick questions, and then we'll get to folks' Q&A. And this is a hard one to answer, and so you might not be able to answer it, but what do you think the breaking point is in terms of timing, right? Like specifically for small businesses, do you feel like, we've been in shelter in place for 3 weeks, we've got another 4 weeks basically.
Yeah.
That takes us to May 3rd. I interviewed the mayor last week, and I was telling her how excited I was to reopen my business on May 3rd, and she said, "Don't get too excited."
Yeah.
And so maybe that means June 1. But like, at what point do you just get to a breaking point where small businesses and the unemployed are just like, we need to open the city up again? And when does that happen, where there's just so much need and pressure to reopen our city? Like what is that point, and how long is that until we're creating just really massive damage on the economic infrastructure of the city?
There's nothing more damaging to an economic structure than a public health crisis and people dying and people not being able to go out on the streets.
Right.
But there's another reality as well, which of course is the economic damage that's really being done right now.
Right.
It's a damage, it's an infliction, it's a wound that's festering right now, and all of us in the city know that, which is why we try to be as balanced as carefully as possible the needs of the business community, both for the purposes of the public as well as for the economy, with those public health priorities and objectives that we have right now. I think the mayor was dead on when she said, don't get too comfortable about that date, because we don't know, Manny. We really don't know. We know, but here's something we do know. We don't want to be New York City in terms of the numbers of people that have been sick and the amount of spread of the virus that has taken place there. We certainly don't want to be like a New York when it comes to New Jersey and the impacts that they're feeling there in their counties. I have a very close childhood friend who works in the mayor of New York's office, and I can tell you that they're just having a hell of a time, even though things are looking a bit more hopeful right now for them, even though there's such damage going on, that we don't want to be there.
Right.
Where we want to be in a place is that we feel confident that we have the infrastructure in place that we need here, that we can be successful and reopen. But we have to follow that very, very clear guidance from our public health team, who really is leading the way right now. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Okay. Sam Ryan has a question. While San Francisco has been a leader in many respects regarding our response to the crisis, what cities, leaders, or systems is OAWD looking to for research and potential models?
Yeah, so one of the first calls that I made was to my counterpart in New York City, Greg Bishop, the head of the small business commissioner there in New York. In addition, getting connected with Bobby Yee, who's the economic director in Seattle, and participating. I wasn't able to do it last night because of the Pelosi call, but participating in a weekly call with economic development leaders across the country, so that we could have conversations about what is working, how do we support our staffs during this very difficult social distancing, shelter-in-place order time that we're in, what resources are working, how best to advocate from a national perspective, to make sure that we're advocating in the same way and building on each other's ideas, so that the drumbeat for small business in particular and for workers in particular is being heard and realized through the policymaking in Washington as well as here at home.
Sharky Laguana, who's the president of the Small Business Commission, and thank you for being on the call. Sharky asks, can you talk about how city workers are taking care of themselves as they work through the crisis, and what kinds of hours are they putting in now, and how leaders like yourself are helping them pace themselves? We have a large city infrastructure, and how are we taking care of our city workers?
I had to be very honest about that. I'm having a hard time with that. I really do believe that this is public service, but at the same time, there are people who do have families and young children at home. And it's about how do you create space for people to be able to regenerate, rejuvenate, so that they can put their full amount of energy and love for the city back into place. It's something that we're looking at right now. Actually, one of my division leads and I were just talking about it before the call. About conversations we need to have to support people in the workplace. It's about rotation. It's about creating space for people. while at the same time reinforcing the need that people need to support the city right now. There are so many people that are stretched thin throughout San Francisco that are counting on us to double down on our work. My wife is here across the table from me right now. I know she's been upset because of the long hours that have been put in, but she also understands that I believe it's deeply, deeply important to do right by the people that we're here to serve.
Yeah.
The damage, the stress, the realities of people's livelihoods being impacted, as well as the added stress of not wanting to hurt your family if you go outside, are deeply, deeply real.
Right.
And we're being very sensitive to those needs right now as well, man.
Right.
Thanks for that question, Sharky.
So Kara, Scott, and James all have specific questions about OAWD programs and unemployment benefits. And so for the three of you, because it is 7:30 at 2, I would just direct you to the OAWD website. That's oawd.org, and all the answers to your questions should be on the OAWD website.
Yeah, and also don't be shy about calling those numbers and leaving a message if you don't talk to someone directly, so that you can get walked through those programs as well. We pride ourselves on being available and being able to call you back during the same day that you call in. So please take advantage of that.
And I just want to take a second and thank Marianne Thompson for being so incredible and such a doer. She is amazing, and I want to publicly thank her for all of her work and her get it doneness. For the people who have tuned in, if you go to the answered section of your Q&A, you will see a link to become a sponsor of Manny's. I'm also going to put a fun little background up right now. So my small business is also shut down, and these conversations are a public service, but we do ask folks if they're able to become a sponsor of Manny's. It's joinit.org/o/Manny's. That's the website, and it's $36 a month, and it is exactly what we need right now to make it through this time. So please consider becoming a sponsor of my small business and helping us reopen whenever Joaquín and the public health officer and the mayor decide it's time. Help us get to that point, and the way you can help us is by going to joinit.org/o/Manny's. This link is also in the answered section of the Q&A box. I want to thank, this is the last conversation of the day, and so I want to thank Sam and Jupiter and Ram from my team for being so amazing. You can tag us at Welcome to Manny's. And Joaquín, it's been so wonderful getting to know you over the years and now working with you as a small business commissioner. You run a tight ship, and you are going to be so important to so many thousands of small and medium business owners and all the people that they employ. So stay healthy and stay strong. And you were born for this moment. You were born for this moment.
I just want to say thank you so much for keeping things so positive while we're out there and giving people a sense of hope even before this, and creating a sense of community that's so deeply needed in our city during these times, especially right now, Manny. So thanks so much, man.
It's an honor. All right, have a good night. I'm going to have my branzini now.
Ciao. Go with the branzino.
All right, talk to you
again,
soon.
OAWD.org, everybody. OAWD.org.
OAWD.org. Thank you, Joaquín. Have a good night. Bye.